People assign you power based on your status. But a lot of that can be garnered just by the way you enter a room, by the way you carry yourself. You can perceive power just by your body language, the way you speak, the way you carry yourself. You feel powerful, and you give off the impression that you are powerful, and you believe that you have control over yourself and your circumstances. That energy is powerful.
Eric Thomas is a writer, an entrepreneur, and a speaker dedicated to helping individuals over 45 create happy, healthy, and wealthy lives. With a wealth of experience as an instructional designer and technical writer, Eric has made significant contributions to prestigious organizations such as the Georgia Department of Education, Colonial Pipeline Company, UPS, and AT&T. Eric's mission is to inspire and guide those looking to transform their lives. So, Eric Thomas, who are you? Could you tell us a bit about your background and what you're doing?
Primarily, I started out in warehouse work. Right out of high school, I got my first what I consider my first real job, and started working in the warehouse. I did that for about 20 some odd years, and just realized that that kind of work is really physically demanding. And I wasn't spending a lot of time with my family. I had 2 children, a son and daughter, and just wasn't spending a lot of time with them. The days were 15, 16-hour days, 6 days a week. And it just wasn't an opportunity to grow. And like I said, physically, that kind of work, you just can't maintain that level of work. So I began to try to figure out what else I could do with my life. I didn't really have a purpose. I really didn't have a plan or strategy. I was just kind of living day to day, not really knowing what I wanted to do or anything along those lines. And I just figured, my mother told me one day once when I got out of high school, that you need to go into technology, IT. So I started doing that. I started PC repair business. I moved into network engineering, moved into software training, moved into technical writing, instructional design. And that kind of led me into what I'm doing now, which I own a couple of instructional design companies. As I own a publishing company, and I do extensive writing. I write my own nonfiction books as well. I don't do any publishing for outside authors, but I'm enjoying the ride. It gives me a lot of time, a lot of freedom, a good income, and I'm enjoying it.
Yeah, that's quite the journey. Thanks for sharing that. You say that you help folks maybe like midlife and beyond find purpose in their lives. Could you talk a little bit about what purpose is and why it's important?
Well, for me, one of the things that kind of led me along this path is and I'm sure a lot of people growing up, we all kind of have the same upbringing as far as what we were taught mattered in our life, purpose and things that you should do to find your purpose. You only had one purpose, or your passion would lead you to your purpose. So a lot of those kind of cliches had me on a path that wasn't going anywhere. I was the type of person that had multiple curiosities. So it was hard for me to imagine me just doing one thing, that I was put here to do one thing, that I should kind of assign myself to one thing. That was kind of difficult for me to believe. And I spent a lot of years struggling with that. And I just figured out, just through my own, that I just believe you're here to do more than one thing. And that thing, you really don't know what that thing is. I don't think anybody can define it outside of yourself. I think we're such complex individuals as human beings that I don't think we could be assigned one specific thing that we should do for the rest of our life. If that's what you want to do, that's fine. But I don't think that's been prescribed to us. I always use an example of a tree. Even a tree has multiple purposes. So if a tree is here to do or able to design to do more than one thing, then certainly we could be. So that put me on a path of kind of finding out what I want to do in my life and kind of creating my own journey, discovering things, following my curiosities, my frustrations. It also led me to see that other people were struggling with the same things. They had been told the same information that I had been told, led to believe the same level of things. And I found it kind of frustrating that if I was struggling, I knew they were struggling, and they were still getting the same information. Generations coming behind me would. So I kind of took it upon myself to kind of put my own spin on how I think we could massage that message and make it a little bit more clear and give people an opportunity to actually explore their lives more on what they want to do instead of what we've been taught.
Yeah, that's great. And the book that you wrote, The Purpose Map, explores this very much, I think is like promise of guiding people on uncovering certain things that could lead to their purpose. And one of the points that you mentioned is how to spot or identify people that are preventing you from having the life that you want. Could you kind of unpack that a little bit for us?
That's I guess, one of my core beliefs that regardless of where you are in your life, regardless of what happens in your life, you're responsible because you're the one making the choices, you're making the decisions. Now, of course, as a child, you didn't have that responsibility because you were only doing what you were taught and programmed or brainwashed of whatever you want to label you want to put on it. At some point, you become what we all consider to be an adult. And part of being an adult is you become responsible for what happens in your life. So part of the danger is that the media and society has this message that we are not responsible for what we do. There's always somebody else at fault. There's always somebody else to blame. It's the government, it's the president, it's taxes, it's the next door neighbor, it's the court system, it's your job, it's your boss, it's the teacher. It's always somebody outside of you. And we're always taught to look outside of ourselves for the solution, but also to look outside of ourselves for the problem. So when you're taught that, it's kind of hard for you to look back and say, okay, well, for me to discard everything that I've been told and kind of defy that and look inside for the problem and look inside for the solution. So you might want to do that, but it's just you've been taught and programmed to do the opposite. And that's very difficult to overcome, especially when it's kind of that kind of message is being emphasized every day that you need to look outside of yourself and blame somebody else. Perfect example is inflation in the country or the job market or something, or you looking at your economic situation. A lot of people are waiting on a presidential election to take place. That necessarily could help you, but most likely it won't. So for you or anybody to sit back and say, well, okay, I'm waiting on this president to get elected and he or she can determine my economic situation is kind of irresponsible on yourself and kind of doing yourself a disservice by doing. That's just one example.
Great point. A lot to unpack there as well. I see kind of this contradiction where if you ask any person, myself included, would you like to have power? I think the answer usually would be yes. Yes, I would like to. That'd be awesome to walk into a room and have people like, show me respect and have some sort of like what I want, I get sort of thing. But then why is it, if that's true or largely true, that we like to externalize responsibility to your earlier point, like it's someone else's fault? Do you see what I'm saying? Like, how do you kind of square that circle?
Well, the whole power thing is once again, is something that you're taught that you have, I guess, control over how other people react to you. And on some level you do. In this country, in this world, per se, people assign you power based on your status. But a lot of that can be garnered just by the way you enter a room, by the way you carry yourself. You can perceive power just by your body language, the way you speak, the way you carry yourself. If you feel powerful and you give off the impression that you are powerful and you believe that you have control over yourself and your circumstances, that energy is powerful. And if other people can recognize that, they can sense that. It might not be about status or how much money you have, but you can exude power just by the way you carry yourself and have influence over other people just by the way you carry yourself and your mannerisms, and your behaviors and your habits and how you carry yourself in a social environment. People can sense that. We're very intuitive creatures. So a lot of times we don't have to say anything, just the way we handle ourselves. People sense that person is different. They might not know what the difference is, but they know that person carries themselves in a very respectful and mannerable and powerful way, as though they're sure of themselves, that they have a level of confidence. And that's power.
What would you say to someone who feels at the bottom, like they feel like they just can't get a leg up? The world's just unfair. They're cursed. Maybe it's just bad luck. We live in chaos. Maybe they're just the odd one out. They tried everything, it seems, and just fail, betrayal, but they're not giving up. So what would you tell them?
First thing I would say is you have to have a hard conversation with yourself, because once again, you're responsible. So some of those choices, some of those decisions you made, those are your choices, your decisions. Some of those you probably shouldn't have made, but a lot of times, like I said, we're taught certain things and we're making choices and decisions based on what we were taught. So when I was in that position where I felt like my back was against the wall, I would always hear people say you have to work hard and life is hard. One of the things that I determined was to get rid of that kind of thinking, and that life isn't hard. It can be hard. And you have situations and events that arrive that can make it difficult and challenging, but life itself is not hard, because most of the things you think about that are required for you to live, breathing and eating, all that stuff is done for you. So you think about if you had to think about what you ate and had to digest your own food and pump your own blood, yeah, life would be hard, but everything is pretty much done for you. So all you need to do is go out and determine what it is you want to do in life, find a path or something you want to pursue, and just start working towards that. And assign yourself to people that have the same mindset. And that might require you to distance yourself from some people that you considered your friends. It might even require you to distance yourself from people that are in your family. But you have to align yourself with other people who don't have that thinking that you had before, where life is hard and my back's against the wall and people are out to get me and I'll never get ahead. That level of energy and thought, you're putting that energy into your body. You're telling yourself what's not going to happen. So the universe is only going to align itself with what you said is not going to happen, what you said is going to happen. It's not going to, it doesn't matter. It just matters what you believe. If you believe the world's against you, then the world's against you. And those situations and events will occur to verify exactly what you think about the situation. So I would also always like to go back to what I would say. In summary, just have a conversation with yourself and realize that some of the things you were taught and some things you were led to believe just aren't true. And ask yourself, these beliefs that I have, do they serve me? They may have served me in the past, but do they serve me now? Me telling myself that life is hard, is that serving me? Or is that a disservice to me? It's telling me myself that the world is against me, that nobody's ever going to give me a break. Is that true? Is that belief serving you or not? And you'll find that a lot of things that you believe just aren't true. And that would be the beginning of the turnaround. Get your mind right, and then you can align yourself with people that are positive that can pull you out of where you were and get you to where you want to be.
Your book, Life After COVID, talking about long haulers. What is a long hauler?
After pandemic hit and they came out with a vaccination, there was still a couple of million people. I don't really know their number, but last I heard was over 10 million people that are suffering from what they call long COVID, or they used to call it long haulers. Long COVID, where you might have chronic fatigue, you have nausea, you have listlessness, you have brain fog, and these are symptoms that they can't figure out what's causing them. There are no tests or anything. There's no analysis to define what's actually causing these symptoms. But there are a lot of people that basically can't work anymore. They can't stay awake. They don't have the energy to walk across a room or to get out, to walk up a flight of stairs, or to sit in a desk, or even to do an interview or a podcast. They don't have the attention to do that. So I kind of came across that group. A friend of mine, she suffers with that, and she was a high performing achiever. She was a professional. She was a doctor, had her doctorate, had a long career, a 6-figure career in the learning industry, and she got COVID, and her whole life changed. Right now, she's struggling with brain fog and chronic fatigue and those types of things, where she can't focus on anything for more than 15 or 20 minutes. She can't walk up a flight of stairs. And one of the things that I wanted to bring attention to was some of the things that she used to kind of journal and get herself into a place mentally where she could move on with her life. And that's why I came up with the journal, to kind of help others that were suffering with the same illness, same symptoms of COVID. And because they haven't found a cure for those actual symptoms. They found something with COVID, but not those actual long haulers or long COVID symptoms.
I like that, analogy to some extent. You could apply that to all of us, or many of us, I should say, whether or not we had that particular onset of symptoms post-COVID. But when I think of myself working in the corporate environment, I was a good employee, I think, as based on feedback. But I always felt like I was tired, like I was expending more energy than my peers, and I didn't know why. It seemed like I just didn't fit in. Like I was an alien on this planet, and everyone belonged except for me. And I just couldn't place my finger on it. I couldn't quite, but it was exhausting. Like I'd work super hard, high performer, as you say, but then I'd need to like recover because it wasn't just in 8 hours. It felt like I worked like 80 hours in an 8 hour day. And now I think part of that was I was wearing a mask. I was wearing a skin suit trying to be what I thought I needed to be because I didn't know who I was. Drilling deeper, I realize now, I didn't know then, that this is shame. I felt like I was bad. Like I just, my identity was just, I was a bad object. And so I wore this suit of, people pleaser or like perfect yes man. And like someone says jump, I'm like, how high, just overperform, but not really, I never knew to really kind of value myself, connect with myself, put a price on my services, say, so like, oh, I could do this for you. It just costs this much instead of just like, here it is, like, and just give. And then I need to recover. And so when you describe long haul, it sounds like that might be similar where if people feel like they're exhausted and they can't quite place it, it might have to do with lack of self-awareness with the root programming that was installed, variety of ways that this could happen, and just kind of connect with themselves. And maybe they need some counsel. Maybe one of your books could help. But what would you say to this phenomena as I described it?
I would say in your case, you didn't have a medical condition, so I won't put the two together. But a lot of people, myself included, kind of walked along the same path as you, a people pleaser, wanting to make others happy. I can think of one example. A particular person asked me, they said they wanted to write a book. This was several years ago. And they asked me to help them write the book. And I found that I had done the outline, I had done the research for the book. I had actually even started writing the book. And I was so happy to do that for them that halfway through the book, not until halfway through the book, that I realized that, Eric, you're actually doing this book for them. So you're depriving them the lesson of tapping into themselves, putting the energy into something that's valuable for them. So you're doing them a disservice in a lot of ways by pleasing them or what I thought was pleasing them. And it took me back to my childhood. And I think that's what a lot of our issues start. Anytime you talk about shame and feeling less than, it might be something your parents or a teacher, or if you got, in some cases, got bullied in school, or some people get bullied in school. But something that was done to you in your childhood that made you think that you don't fit, and not you per se, but the audience, that you don't fit, that you have to do more than the next person to fit in, or do more than the next person to be liked, or do more than the next person to get accepted. All of that stems from something that happened in your childhood. And I think when you look back at some of those events, or maybe something that someone said to you that keeps you on that path, you can break it by determining basically what keeps you feeling shameful, or what makes you feel less than. And once again, it always goes back to a question I ask myself in any of these situations. Eric, if you feel this way about yourself, what is it that makes you feel this way, or what was done to make you feel that way? And sometimes it takes a couple of days or weeks to figure it out, but you can always hone in on a couple of events or situations, or something a teacher said. And for me, it was something a teacher, I never forget, a third grade teacher said something to me that I had not studied for, I think, a homework or a quiz or something. And she looked at me and she said, "You're never going to amount to anything." And that one statement that she made carried with me for the next 30 or 40 years. But I didn't realize it until I asked myself that question, Eric, what is it that someone did or said to you that's making you feel less than? And that put me on a path of kind of proving her wrong, that I had to go above and beyond to help other people, to get them to like me, to accept. And so I probably spent 30 or 40 years on a path serving other people when I didn't have to, just based on something that someone said to me that I looked up to and respected. She influenced me in a very negative way. Not intentional, but...
I have kind of mixed feelings about that now. It sucks at the time, but it kind of becomes a superpower. And like, superpowers don't come cheap. So it's almost like, would I change anything? I wouldn't wish it on anyone else, but I don't know. I don't think I would, because we're here. and we endured. Another saying, that which does not kill you makes you stronger. So, and nature, I think, largely is fair. It's just in the micro, it may suck, it may seem unfair, but if you look big picture, for example, you mentioned bullying. Often it's like a vicious cycle. If you have shame, you're often a target for bullies, and then you have more shame, which makes you a nicer target for bullies, and so on and so forth. So it doesn't matter if it's your family or school or work. There's like 1 out of 5 or whatever that's going to, somehow, and also your perspective too. Like I mentioned before about making your own reality. You're looking for things that, oh, they looked at me this way, or and then you're maybe a little bit less friendly, let's say, or you're less trusting and open. Understandably so, but again, the data that you're putting out there makes for a different kind of equation. So it's there's a different, like, inputs and outputs. So then where does the spark come from in this change? If someone just, let's say, has a bad hand, they, it's not like they had a choice, but they got a bad hand. They're reaping the results of like a, what do you call it? Like a doom loop where it gets harder and harder to break out. More and more evidence to suggest that I should be ashamed of my existence, or I'm not as good as Eric or whoever. Often it takes someone that understands you to say something, or to kind of spark that engine of like, wait a minute, I have done these things. I'm capable of more. I'm still alive. Like, it's not the end of the world. Maybe if I help someone else, that'll demonstrate that I'm capable of productive, output. What are your thoughts on how to kind of break out of that doom loop?
That's a very difficult thing to do, and for a lot of people, unfortunately, they can't, because a lot of what's keeping them in that is the messaging on social media and internet, and kind of the media in general, that it's always telling you that woe is me, and whatever you're going through, life is hard. It's kind of supposed to be this way. You're supposed to struggle. You're supposed to be at your wits' end all the time. Everything is supposed to be against you. So you've got all these things that are kind of reinforcing what you feel about yourself. So it's almost, I'm not going to say it's impossible, but it's very difficult to begin to do that. One of the things that I've learned is until you're ready for that change, it really doesn't matter what you hear or who's around you. So you have to, on some level, and it's nothing you can actually do. It's just a moment when you get in your life and you say, okay, it's just enough. I'm tired of being in this place. I'm tired of feeling this way. I'm tired of having these experiences. There's more to life. I know there's more because I've seen more. I know there are other people that are not in this situation. So I know it's possible. Once you get to that point where, as my grandmother would say, you're sick and tired of this, then the opportunity can come in and pull you out of it. But a lot of people just aren't in that space where they're sick and tired. They want better, they want different, but they don't really want to, because they kind of stay in that mindset where, oh, well, I guess this is just how it's supposed to be. And you can kind of hear it in their opinions of things. You might ask them, well, how you doing today? Oh, well, it's just another tough day. It's just kind of how life is. It's those kind of messages that you keep telling yourself that keeps you in that place. And until you get tired of that, you're going to stay there. But one of the things that I will say is something a person can do is kind of listen to the things that you're saying to yourself, kind of the messages and the opinions and how you respond to certain questions. And if you always have a kind of a negative or a low, what I call a low energy response to something, doesn't mean you have to be bouncing off the walls. But if you have somebody ask you, it's Monday morning, how you doing? And you say, oh, well, Monday morning, I can't wait till Friday. That's a pessimistic, low energy answer. Of course, it's Monday, but you could say, you know what, today's another day opportunity. I'm going to pull myself out of this situation. So you get to choose your response, and that's up to you. And if you make the choice for positive response, then you'll get positive energy to help pull you out of the situation. Otherwise, you're going to stay there.
Yeah, if you have a negative belief that you don't know that you have, it's like an algorithm. It's like all the input just gets kind of processed in that way. It's like, oh, I had this unhelpful belief this whole time. Like, let's take that out. So lastly, I'd like to talk about your other book, a little bit older now, a decade or so, The Employee's Guide to Entrepreneurship. I think that's very, very useful. And the Employee Entrepreneur's Guide to Starting and Incorporating a Side Business. Came out about 10 or 11 years ago, and I think is as useful now, if not more so. Is there anything that you would add to that in the decade since?
It's a lot. I think about rewriting that book in so many different ways. There's probably like the LLC part, the incorporating part. The opportunities now are just so immense now. I get so excited sometimes when people say, I want to start a business, but I don't know where to start. It's almost like just pick something. You can throw a stick and hit something. It's so many opportunities out there. At the time that I wrote that book, it was pretty much kind of like a drop ship kind of business thing, digital products, those kind of ideas, but you didn't have the opportunities, the platforms weren't available as they are now to allow you to talk about those things and express your ideas. As media platforms we have like we have X now and Facebook and TikTok and Instagram. Back then it was pretty much you kind of blogging your way, write your own blog and talk about your own ideas, which was, you couldn't get a lot of traction that way. But like I said, now with social media, you almost like have your own platform to talk about the things you want to talk about and express your own idea and determine what the marketplace wants you to create. And if you align yourself with what the marketplace wants you to create with also something that's interesting to you, then that's a win-win for both of you. So it's not a lot you have to figure out. And like I said, I think about rewriting that book, but the idea behind it was, a lot of people talk about quitting your job, but you might have medical issues. You might have children. You might have a parent or a loved one that requires health insurance. So you technically can't quit your job because you lose your benefits. And we know how important insurance is. So there had to be another opportunity for people to do a side business or a side hustle or to earn extra income without having to give up their job, which nowadays it just seems like you either quit your job and become an entrepreneur or you don't do anything. There had to be a happy medium. And that was what that book was about. Just share with people that you could keep your 9 to 5, which is actually what I did for several years, and then transition, if you ever wanted to become a full-time entrepreneur. And the opportunities, like I said, now are just so immense and vast that there's really no reason for you not to start an online business right now.
It seems to be the sort of action that compounds, much like an investment, because you're learning as you go. You're going to get more ideas. You're going to validate your model and figure out better ways to monetize, get new ideas for new businesses. And like you could then sell that to people through coaching, through courses, through books, etc., and just meet interesting people along the way. So yeah, I think that's a really great idea. And also, just don't try to analyze from the sidelines as much. Like dive in, learn by doing at the same time.
And some of that is, I would always caution people that there are several ways to learn. And a guy told me this years ago. He said, technically, nobody ever should make a mistake. There should never be a mistake made, because everything that you've done and ever will do, somebody has done before. So if you sit back and you study what somebody else has done and you analyze it and you learn what they've done, you almost should never make a mistake. Which, I know that's not realistic, but there shouldn't be the level of failure and mistakes that we make in our life in general, because we have a tendency to just start doing something instead of sitting back, taking a couple of weeks to observe something, the person who's doing it, and study them and learn from them. And you can eliminate a lot of those mistakes just by observing. But, sometimes we just take the Nike model and just do it. And you, of course, you make a lot of mistakes that you probably didn't, that you probably could have avoided. And for a lot of people, that frustrates them, and they tend to, once again, go back to that model or that belief that the world's against me. This is not for me. I can't seem to make this work. Well, you can make it work. You just, approach it from a different standpoint and do a little bit more learning and study than just doing. I was always taught that doing should be the last thing you do.
Fair point. Do you have any ideas for future books? You mentioned you might want to update the Entrepreneur Guide. Is there anything else you're thinking about?
I'm thinking about a couple of our online books for people that are over 40, especially. I think they have a unique set of circumstances, situations, and conditions. A lot of them it's a technical issue. They don't understand software and application, how to use the internet, some of the tools on the internet. So there's a learning part there that, people in their 20s or 30s that are coming along, they grew up in this, so they don't have that they don't have those level of obstacles. They also might not have children in their 20s. People that are typically over 40 sometimes they have health conditions. They have kids that are in college, or they require them to keep their main income. So there are a lot of other things going on with somebody who's over 40 that wants to start a business, as opposed to somebody who's in their 20s that wants to start a business. That, I think that's going to be my next book, how to help people over 40 start an online business. Digital products. I've never done a brick and mortar storefront business, or I can't speak on that experience, but I have opened up several successful online businesses.
Well, when that book comes out, I hope we can get you back on, and I'll certainly pick up a copy.
I'll be glad to.
Thank you so much, Eric, for talking with me today. You have a lot of wisdom, a lot of great experience that you can share with us, and it's a real pleasure.
Thank you, David. I enjoyed the experience. Really did.
Is there anywhere you'd like to direct people to follow you and keep up to date with what you're doing?
You can follow me on Twitter or X at The Purpose Map. That's where you can find me right now. I'm coming out with a newsletter here in the next couple of weeks, and perhaps even a free email course. But right now you can find me on X at The Purpose Map.
Nice. Well, we'll be following you there.
Thank you. Thank you, David.